Hi, this is Andrew, and I'm here again today bringing you a KeyForge deck reveal. And today we're going to be going over Gnatie the Squire Cardinal. This is actually a deck that I opened pretty early and just haven't gotten around to reviewing yet. Haven't gotten to take it to an event, although I actually was looking through and thinking, man, this deck actually seems pretty good. Um, but yeah, it's pretty fun. It has Sanctum, Logos, and Dis. Quick note before I tear into it. Um, this is actually the last of my currently owned decks. I haven't gone through. I've gone through one of my daughter's decks, but there's a bunch of decks there that we might get around to, and I might see if they want to join me for that. And then I have a couple of decks that are my wife's that I might go through. We'll see, or I might do some more, just recording play sessions, which I think is also really fun. Um, and there's always that possibility of getting more decks. I'm very excited for when Age of Ascension comes out. The latest rumor I heard is that it might be out sometime in May, which is very exciting. So and if you missed that, if you missed it, the other crazy news is that when that comes out, they're not going to be printing any more of Call of the Archons. Um, Call of the Archons will still be legal, and from what FFG has said, it sounds like it will be legal indefinitely, forever and always. But they aren't going to be printing it anymore. So if you were really hoping to find some uh, an OTK deck or something like that, just open more before it goes out, then now might be a good time to try to get some. Uh, yeah, that doesn't mean that stores won't have them for a while, but they're not going to be printing anymore, which is just very interesting. And there are over 1 million uh, decks printed and sold. Not all of those have been registered, but they're out there. So anyway, just an interesting development there. And I guess a cool thing from that perspective is because of the Ascension framework, where I guess a deck can achieve a certain power to where it'll go away. One could imagine that if there are decks like the OTK decks that are a real problem, they could just go away over time because of that mechanic. And my guess is that FFG will do something nice for people whose decks get ascended, so you won't feel bad about it. But anyway, just interesting stuff, interesting developments. All right, so let's get going with Gnatie, which I might be saying wrong, but Gnatie the Squire Cardinal. So we start off with Dis and Hand of Dis. Nice, you can destroy a creature. They have to have at least 3 creatures for this to be useful, but it can be nice. 3 Fates, a little more direct destruction. Gain an Amber and destroy the 3 most powerful creatures. That's pretty good in this deck. You'll see this deck doesn't have a ton of really high power creatures, so it can get some use. Then we have 2 copies of Dominator Bauble, and man, that's really exciting, because that means that if we can get any sort of board state, then we can have some pretty efficient Dis turns, right, where we're getting value out of our other cards, out of our other creatures as well. Of course, with this on the table, our opponent is probably going to be more incentivized to try to, not let us have stuff sitting on the table. Then we have Lash of Broken Dreams. So again, this sets up a situation where if I have both Baubles and the Lash on the table, and I don't have any Dis creatures, but I do have some creatures in other houses, I can still have a great turn where I increase the cost by 3 for my opponent and get to use a couple of non-Dis creatures, while then getting some discards onto the table. We have 2 copies of Charette, which is another way to help slow down our opponent's ability to forge keys. A very bursty capture there. 2 copies of Pit Demon, so some steel there as well. And you can see there's an engine here where we can, we can slow them down with Charette. We can either slow them down or make them lose Amber with Lash. And if we have the Pit Demons on the table, we're able to steal it as well as, whatever we can get done with the Dominator Bubbles. So pretty cool engine for Amber control there. And then we have 2 copies of Succubus. There's a lot of 2-ofs in this deck. We have 2 copies of Succubus, which is going to reduce our opponent's hand size. Again, these are going to be high priority targets for them, but if these do stay on the table, then that can really help us control and keep our opponent down. And if we happen to get them in a situation where they don't have Amber, the Terror is nice. Otherwise, it's just a 5-power creature, and that's fine too. But yeah. All right. On to Logos. So I mentioned board control. This is one path toward keeping it, along with those 3 fates. More direct destruction in Logos this time. So we have Bouncing Death Quark, destroy an enemy creature and a friendly creature. Because I get to choose, I can hopefully twist this to my advantage. I can do this as many times as I like, as long as it's possible to repeat the entire effect. So, good way to possibly do a bunch of destruction. Effervescent Principle, some more Amber control. Each player loses half their Amber, rounding down the loss, and gain a chain. Certain situations, that could be really useful. And then Neurosiphon is another card that gives me a little bit of Amber control in Logos. Phase Shift, nice for getting other cards out on the table during a Logos turn, potentially with immediate effects, potentially hoping to go disc the turn after. Random Access Archives is just kind of a random fun one. Gain an Amber and archive the top card of my deck. There's not a lot of archive in this deck, so this is sort of, there's not... I guess the thing I always worry about with Random Access Archives is that it's going to put me in a situation where the card that got archived is something that I would want on a different turn than the other stuff I have archived. But without a lot of other archive, I think there's a Sloppy Lab Work and that's it. So without a lot of other archive, that doesn't matter too much. Sloppy Lab Work, archive, and discard, that's pretty fantastic. Helps speed us up. Spangler Box is an artifact that exhausts to purge a creature in play, and if you do that, your opponent gains control of Spangler Box, and if it leaves play, you return all the cards that were purged by it to play. So again, pretty good, decent board control here, although it definitely gives your opponent something to do as well. This is definitely better if your opponent is not Logos, because you use it and then they're going to be disincentivized to actually use it back on you. But it's slow. It takes at least 2 turns before you can use it. Then we have Bat Drone, which has Skirmish and Fight Steal 1. Pretty good if we can, if we have good board state and can keep it out there. Brain Eater, 6 power, and after a creature is destroyed fighting it, draw a card. Dr. Escotera, which gains us an Amber for each Forge key our opponent has when it's played. Quixo, a little more fight. 3 power, skirmish, fight, draw a card. So you see there's some fight effects in Logos, which is not the best thing to see in Logos. I always am suspicious that this won't go great when my Logos wants to fight, because they're just not that great at it. But if you can hold your opponent down with this stuff, it's not terrible. We have Mother, 5 power, and it increases our hand size by 1. That's fantastic and big, so if we can keep that on the board, I'm really happy. Yeah, and that's it for Logos. So a little Creature Light in the Logos here, and you'll see a little Creature Light in the Sanctum as well. That's probably the biggest thing I'm worried about. We have a stronger creature set in Dis, and then unfortunately no Arise. Ooh. Let me check on my dog really quick. Yeah, I'm going to say that was an overreaction on the part of the dog, but it's okay. All right. Let's see. Okay, so now we're going to be on to Sanctum, and the first card we have here is Shield of Justice, which is going to do a lot of good for us if we can get some good fights in. It prevents creatures from taking damage, but it's an action, so we have to use it on on that turn. We have 2 Hallowed Blasters, which are going to heal our creatures. Obviously most useful if we're doing work with fighting. Or if our opponent has some direct damage effects or something like that as well. But with 2 copies of Sigil of Brotherhood, which is pretty cool. You gain the amber when you play it. And then it has Omni sacrifice it to be able to use friendly Sanctum creatures that turn. That can be a strong effect. Whispering Reliquary, exhaust to return an artifact to its owner's hand. You could use this on the Spangler box if you were in a weird situation where that made sense, but more likely you're going to want to use it on your opponent's stuff. There's not really much else in here that we would not want to stay on the table. Champion and Naphiel, 6 power and an armor and taunt. It's a good way to protect your smaller creatures, like your Commander Remiels, which reap and let you use a friendly non-Sanctum creature. That's pretty powerful. Yeah, we'll come back to that in a second. I love them though. Then we have Jehu, which gains you 2 amber after you choose Sanctum as your active house, and then Staunch Knight, which if you put it on the end is pretty big, 6 power, 2 armor. And lastly, Protect the Weak, which gives a creature an extra armor and taunt. You can imagine some good targets for this might be like the Terror, or perhaps Brain Eater, some cards that are going to want to do some fighting and they're big and can protect smaller stuff. The only card we'd really want to put it on in Sanctum that probably would be Champion Naphiel, which already has taunt, or maybe Staunch Knight, although then you're only going to be protecting one thing with taunt. But that could be good. So the dream with this deck is to get into a situation where, due to having 2 Dominator Baubles out and 2 Commander Remiels, you can always be using pretty much always be using creatures cross house, right? I mean, you can imagine a turn where you play Dis, you steal 2 with your Pit Demons, you use the Dominator Baubles to use Commander Remiels, which let you use your Logos creatures. There's some pretty fantastic combos like that you can imagine. The problem is those are pieces that you have to get on the board. That said, the Dominator Baubles are likely to stay on the board for the most part, and the Remiels are more likely to die. But anyway, if you can get in a situation where you're getting a lot of efficiency out of those cross-house synergies, then it can be pretty fantastic. And there's decent amber generation. There's even, like I forgot the Sigil of Brotherhood, so that means even on a Logos turn, you can still use your Commander Remiels if they're out. So you could get into a good rhythm. Probably the things that this deck is a little lighter on, there's no capture, which is okay because we have some decent amber control, but it could use stronger amber control for one thing. And then the other problem it has, I think, is a lack of really big creatures. It has a few, but not a ton. To balance that out, you have the 3 Fates, which can maybe help a little bit, but I worry about getting into a situation where my opponent just has a lot of board control and nothing I can put out sticks. But anyway, so but I think it's a pretty decent deck. I'll pull up. Let me pull up the put myself here too. If we look at this deck in decks of KeyForge, yeah, so it's kind of a middle of the road SAS score, but um, effective creature, interesting. I guess a high arc. Yeah, that doesn't seem that high. So yeah, it's not like it doesn't have super high ratings on that front, but you can definitely imagine situations where it does really well. And yeah, it's fun for sure, especially if some of those synergies start to pay off, then you can get a lot of good value out of it. But again, I think that probably what's weakest to is board control, where things are just getting destroyed, knocked off the board as soon as they hit. So anyway, that's that. Thanks for watching. Again, uh, I really love making these, and I'm sure I'll be making more over time. But for at least for now, I don't have the option of making more with my own because I've done them all. So I might do some with my kids, or maybe get Mark, who's done some of the set review videos with me, get him on to go through one of his decks, something like that, as well as maybe just some play videos. So if you enjoyed, look for those. Let me know, if you think you saw something, some strength or synergy or weakness in this deck that I didn't call out, then please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And also, if you liked it, then there's a button to express that. And if you want to see more of these or other videos that I make, then you're welcome to subscribe. I'd love to have you come along. And until next time, keep forging keys.